Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. More Christmas cards for you guys. I'm going to show how I made the main card, and then I'll show the other two at the end because they're the exact same thing. I'm starting with the Spellbinders Santa's Workshop Shape Abilities. Spellbinders released this, and then they released kind of companion sets for each season, which I thought was really cool. So I got this one, and then Spellbinders sent me the Harvest Time and Springtime ones. And since I'm on like Christmas card kick, and plus I just wasn't in the mood to make anything like spring themed right now, I actually used elements from the other two to make more Christmas cards. So since these die sets come with like everything to build these little scenes, and you don't need the Santa's Workshop for the other ones, like you can still build your own little scenes without it. But obviously they were designed to go together and complement each other. So when I'm doing cards like this, where there's like tons of die cuts, like I'm not going to do any stamping, nothing like that, but there's just all these little die cuts. This is why I keep pretty much all my scraps. I've been doing that for years now. It used to be back in the day, it was like, don't keep little tiny scraps. Like, what are you going to do with them? But now it's like, oh, I keep them all because all these little dies, they're perfect for tiny little scraps. So I just go through my stash of cardstock. I keep my scraps with my cardstock. I use those like job ticket folders to hold my cardstock. I got mine through a Canadian, it was like supply company or something. I don't have a link for them, but you could look up just like vinyl job ticket holders, I'm sure, and find resources for them if that's what you're interested in. I also used to use like just manila folders, regular office manila folders to hold my cardstock. Either one works great. But yeah, I keep all the scraps with each color cardstock, and I always reach for scraps first, which you can see here. I've got just random scraps. And I will link to the colors of cardstock I use and whatnot. But when I'm doing cards like this, I get everything kind of ready first. So I just like cut down all my scraps or pull out my scraps and then figure out, which dies are going to go with what. And then I can lay out, like a set like this, I can lay out almost all the die cutting onto my platform here. I'm using my Spellbinders Platinum 6. So I've got just all my little cardstock scraps and all the wafer dies. So I can die cut the bulk of my scenes in just one pass. So some of them I'm going to do multiples, like the trees I want multiple die cuts of, etc. But this just makes things way easier. So, and then also when I'm like done my first pass, I set all of the like die cuts together. I set aside the dies I'm not going to use again back with like the packaging. And then I just kind of keep repeating the process, and I toss the actual like scraps into my little recycle bin. So I'm going to keep repeating this process until I have everything like die cut and ready to go. And while I'm doing this, I have my Glimmer hot foil system heating up. I wanted to use that for the sentiments, just, again, to tie it all together. So I'm going to do all my die cutting with regular cardstock. And I also pulled out the Tim Holtz, like the Ideology, his metallics, because he has that rose gold paper in the pack that I love it. One, it die cuts like a dream, and two, it's perfect to go with all this. So I'm going to incorporate some rose gold because I'm somewhat obsessed with that. Like, it just goes with everything. So I did that, and I also die cut the blue cardstock. I die cut with the wafer die that comes in the Santa's Workshop set for the snow, because I'll show that in a minute. It's just easier that way. So by now, I'm done pretty much all my die cutting. I want to do my sentiments. So I have my Glimmer hot foil system. I turned it on. The light came on. It's ready to go. So I'm lining up sentiments from the Holiday Sentiments Glimmer plates. Cannot talk. Lined up the Merry Christmas, and I had already made sure this would fit. So there was reason for all this. So I lined it up. I like to use my Teflon bone folder to move it around because the Glimmer plates, after you put them on the heating plate, start heating up pretty quickly. So if I need to line up a sentiment like this that's two pieces, etc., I like using my Teflon bone folder for that to get things straight. So I've pressed the button, so that light's going to flash until it's ready to go. Once it's ready to go, I cut down some of the Glimmer hot foil in rose gold, of course, and I place that on there. And then I'm going to run this through my Platinum 6 with the Glimmer hot foil base, the plate, the foil. I put a dark gray piece of cardstock over it. And then I'm using the Glimmer hot foil, the plastic shim, and the clear plate. No cardstock shim, nothing. I find this works perfectly for me. So I like to kind of run it back and forth through the machine a couple times, just to, press it in. And so far, this has been, especially with sentiments, this has been working perfectly. I don't get any overfoiling, nothing. It's just perfect. So I did that, and then set my hot plate back in there because I'm actually going to do another sentiment in a minute. And then I'm going to die cut this sentiment. All I wanted to make sure was that the two words were straight, but they didn't need to be straight on the cardstock because I'm die cutting that cardstock, and I'm die cutting it with the base from the Santa's Workshop wafer die set. I realized that Merry Christmas would fit right on there, so it's just perfect, and it's foiled, and it's rose gold on the dark gray, and it just makes me happy. Anyway, I have the base back in the unit here, and I'm heating up another sentiment. I could have done these at the same time, but usually, as is my first go with everything, I don't have everything planned out. When I did my other cards, I was doing both at the same time. So this is the Everyday Sentiments 2 set, and I chose the Sending Love sentiment. So I did the same process, let it heat up, the little bit of gold, rose gold foil on there, and then another piece of dark gray cardstock. And then after it was heated up, put it in my Platinum 6 machine with the plastic shim and the clear plate. Ran that through back and forth a couple times to, impress it really nicely into the gray cardstock. Remove the foil, and I've got the sentiment. The sentiment's a little crooked again. Again, I don't care. I'm going to die cut that sentiment with, there's a coordinating wafer die in the both sets. The Holiday Sentiments Glimmer plates and the Everyday Sentiments come with a nice sentiment banner die. So I'm just going to use that to die cut this because I'm going to save that for the inside of the card, which I'll get to a little later in the video. So I'm just going to do this so that I can set my die cut machine aside. And again, when I'm doing, when I do the other cards, not filming, I kind of keep everything in their, same spot. I keep my die cut machine and my hot foil machine all in the same place. And I'm not having to fiddle so much, but trying to fit things in camera, anyway. So to create my little scene, like I had said, I die cut the blue cardstock with the little snowflake kind of wafer die in the Santa's Workshop set. That way I didn't have to place all those little round snowflakes all over the place. It's just quicker. So I did that. And then for the frame, since I had die cut a white piece and the blue piece and then the rose gold piece to get just the frame, I actually decided to stack all three of those pieces together. So it just kind of gave the frame a little bit more, depth. And then for the little workshop, I actually die cut a really light gray cardstock, and I backed it with some washi tape to keep all the window pieces in place. And then the dark gray cardstock, I popped all the windows out, and then I just adhere that over top. So I don't have to sit and fiddle and adhere every single little teeny tiny die cut. This just made it go so much faster. So I've, of course, sped this up, in editing and whatnot. But this is another one of those things where you just kind of sit and go. There's not a whole lot of difficulty. It's more just kind of adhering everything into place and building your own little scenes and whatnot. It's all kind of done. And after everything's die cut, it's literally just a matter of grabbing each piece and adhering it into place and then building my little scene. So you can follow the scene that comes on the packaging, but I decided to kind of move things around a bit and put a little bit of my own spin on it, did my own color combo, etc. So I decided to kind of put the little workshop kind of off to the side, and then I was going to add these pine trees, which I staggered with 2 different shades of green cardstock, and then just kind of going around and building things. And then once I start getting things into place for that little Santa's Workshop, because the walls are thicker, I'm going to use some scraps of cardstock to be able to adhere the roof of the little workshop, just to give everything the right sort of depth and dimension and whatnot. And then another thing you technically could do, I didn't do this, but then I was after these were all done, I was ooh, these would be really fun to add, either some, puffy paint or some glitter accents and that for the snow. Again, you could kind of take them up those extra levels if you wanted to, but I was happy with the rose gold and the foil. That kind of satisfied my inner magpie. But you totally could add, you know, a little bit of stickles or some, like I said, puffy accents or anything like that to add, you know, the sparkle and the snow and whatnot. But for me, I was quite happy with the rose gold and whatnot. And I will add a few little embellishments, courtesy the die cuts here, onto my actual card base. So once I've got everything kind of adhered and I'm happy with it, for all the little tiny, like little wafer dies, this is where my reverse tweezers come in. They're just a lifesaver. These are still, to this day, my absolute favorites. I have 2 pairs of them because one usually likes to walk off half the time. I always link to these, but these are the EK Success reverse tweezers, and they're just, they're so perfect. So use those to hold, you know, some of the little tiny pieces here and there. And then once my scene is built, I now just need to adhere everything to my card front. So I just have the lighter gray cardstock that I'd cut down to slightly smaller than an A2 card front. And then I adhered the base and then the frame and my scene onto the card front here. And then there's a little set of stars in the Santa's Workshop die set. So I die cut like scraps of that rose gold paper with the stars. And then I also die cut just another scrap of white cardstock with the base that has like the little snowflakes, snowballs, whatever you want to call them. And to adhere those to the back without to my background without taking 5 years to do it, I just put dabs of my craft tacky glue where I wanted it, and then I just pick up these pieces with my little jewel picker and press them into place. So it took no time at all to add, you know, some little stars and little snowflakes to the background just to, you know, finish it all off. So once I've got the card front done, for the inside, this is where I'm going to use that Sending Love sentiment. And again, that's why I wasn't worried about it being like crooked or anything, because after it was die cut, I can cut off the edges. I saved a couple extra little tree pieces and die cut another deer. And then at the very end, I actually ended up adding some more of the little die cut rose gold stars because I had a bunch sitting on my desk and I didn't want to waste them. So I decided to add those too. And then I also did, like I said, 2 more cards, the exact same style, same colors, but I used the elements from the Harvest Time and Springtime Snapshots wafer die sets because I just loved like the barn and the windmill. So I'll show that in a second. So all the insides of the cards are the exact same. I used that Sending Love sentiment, foiled it onto the gray cardstock, added the deer and the trees and the stars, and then did my scenes somewhat similar, but for obviously the first card, it was Santa's Workshop wafer die set. So I've got my sentiment all foiled and gorgeous. This is the one I used the Harvest Time, so I used the barn and a couple of the like background pieces for the snow. So just similar, but it's got that nice barn. And then this one uses the windmill from the Springtime and a bit of the background pieces again to kind of build the scene. These were so much fun to make. Love it. As always, I will have links below the video to my blog post. I'll have a supply list. I'll link to everything I use so you can check it out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting. I really appreciate it. I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.